Guys, if you have anything that you would like to ask, go to hashtag IFBG 2014 to ask your questions. Well, I'm going to ask the first. You used a lot of quotations to help inspire your presentation, and one of my favorite quotations by Walt Disney is, you may not know it when it happens, but sometimes a kick in the teeth is the best thing in the world for you. And you talked about using your failure to push yourself and to continue going. What would you say to those who feel like, to make sure that the magic that they're trying to hold on to for their innovation, to hold on to that and not let it go?
Well, I think it's important when you do fail to get up and try again quickly. That's the big thing. You know, all too often, especially in large organizations, when there's a failure, everybody tries to pass the blame instead of learning from that failure, as they do at Disney. You know, The Little Mermaid was a production that was started in the 1940s, and nobody at Disney seems to realize why it was stopped, but it never took off. But it was used, the original storyboards were used for the 1980-something, version of The Little Mermaid that was a blockbuster hit. So, learn from failures, discuss them, see what you can learn, try again quickly. And as Walt said, he learned more from his failures than he did from his successes.
Zach, do we have any questions?
We have a few. One from Shelby Hanley. Bill, do you think that our advancement in technology over time, like the iPhone, has dulled the youth's motivation for creation?
I do. I think that, that the team environment and the collaborative environment, we all look at communicating people through text messaging, through emails. People may be sitting, 10 feet away from you instead of going over there and saying, hey, what do you think of this product or this idea? You'll send an email to them instead of sitting there and discussing it. So I do think that it is stifling some of the creativity that happens when like minds start talking and not working on texts.
Next one comes from Chris Patterson. Bill, what is the best book on leadership that you have read recently?
Well, outside of the Disney way, and the best book on leadership. I like a lot of the biographies. I've been reading Steve Jobs' biography, and I think there's lessons to be learned, both good and bad, from the Steve Jobs biography. I was reminded of Stephen Covey's, the late Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, when the students were singing about those habits. That's always a good one, and Stephen was so kind to endorse all of our books. Those are the ones that come to mind offhand.
Next one's from James Watson. He says, what advice do you have for dealing with the fun squelchers in the workplace?
Don't let them get to you. Don't let the ankle biters get to you. As I call them sometimes, ankle biters, as well as you saw in the little video. You just have to keep moving on, and sometimes you have to ignore them. If they're in a position of authority, then you have to look at ways of dealing with them like you do the bullies. Try to reaffirm your dreams. Try to set up milestones. Try to sell them on the dream and continually sell them on that. But if they're just another department or someone in your group that's a fun squelcher and you can't fire them, then try to ignore them.
Next one comes from Brendan Lewis. You talked about adults bringing out their child sides, but children change. How do you or Pixar capture the interest of children today?
I'm sorry, would you read that?
One more time, it said you talk about adults bringing out like their child side, but children are constantly changing. So how does Pixar kind of keep up with the child changing? Well,
I think they're changing, but I think they're alike too. I mean, I think a child likes a good story. I think looking at my grandchildren, I mean, they are still enamored with films like Bambi and Peter Pan and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I mean, those still capture their imagination. So I think the children are more alike than they are different. Yeah, there's new technology. I think that we have to be able to reach children on iPhones and iPads and social media and such, and be able to stimulate their learning through those types of media. But we can't forget about, it's all about a story. It's all about engaging them and getting them involved in a story, whether it's teaching them in a classroom or getting them involved in a product.
Speaking of teaching in a classroom, we have one from a teacher. It says her goal is to see their students' success, but they even fear failure. What's one small step we can do to encourage failure in the school?
I think celebrate it. Celebrate failure and say, what did we learn from that? How can we learn? How can we improve from that? Rather than chastising someone for failing, saying, what can we learn from this? How can we turn this into a positive experience? How can we have this not happen next time?
Next one is, if you want to add creativity to a company culture that doesn't utilize it effectively, would you recommend a shock or a slow addition?
Shock, definitely shock. I think you need to totally immerse an organization. I think a large percentage of the people will get it if you do it properly. And it takes about 3 days of your leaders being totally immersed in we call a dream retreat, or learning about why your old practices didn't work and going through exercises, what you need to change. The people who don't get it, you can work on trying to make them come along, but there's a certain point in time that you're going to have to bite the bullet and say, these people are not going to be part of the future of our organization.
And then we have time. We'll try to see if we can get a couple more answer, guys, but we have one final question for right now, and it is, how do you keep the mind of a child in a grown-up word, kind of in short?
Well, I think you have to continually remember what it was like to be a child. Don't let, when you take yourself, one of my favorite quotes that I wrote, when you take yourself too seriously, life ceases to be fun. You need to take your job seriously, you need to take your product seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. Have fun, enjoy what you're doing. Life's too short not to like what you're doing. You may not like your job at the end of the day, but the next morning you should be ready to go tackle it again.
All right, thank you so much. This is a great honor to meet you. We get one more round of applause.
One of the most interesting questions I received from one of the students back here, one of the students said, "Oh, you're the Disney person." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What do you do at Disney?" I said, "Well, I write about it and I teach people about the culture and their leadership and that." And they said, "Are you Walt Disney?" I said, "No, unfortunately, he's not with us anymore." So, thank you.